Hi there, my name is Christian Eschbach, and welcome to another one of my album reviews. And if you are one of my regular viewers, you'll know that I have typically avoided doing repeat albums from the same artists, with the exception of Alice Cooper, which I do regularly, and Frank Zappa, which I've slipped in quite a few as well. I've decided that I'm going to start doing that with a lot of other artists as well too. There's a lot of back catalog stuff I really kind of want to start getting into. And I figured who better to start with than the Beatles. So, I'm going to do a triple shot of the Beatles for the next three reviews. In this review, we're going to start with Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul is arguably where I start to honestly enjoy the Beatles. The pop bubblegum stuff was okay. I'm not that big of a fan of it. I'm definitely much more when we get into the psychedelic era, when the band is actually less about recording, releasing, and touring, and more about experimenting and playing with in the album in the studio. There's just something about experimenting in the studio and having fun that, just seeing what you can come up with, and that's really cool. This album though is kind of like that middle ground album because there's some experimentation on it, not a whole heck of a lot. I also want to point out that this is the remaster. It's got some cool little artwork and that in there. All right. The remaster is worth getting. I do have one of the original releases that is not the remaster, which is Abbey Road. I compare it to the remasters. I will take the remaster sound quality over my original CD quality any day. When people like to have that argument about how vinyl sounds warmer and better and CDs just sound so cold and with original pressings back in the early days of CDs, especially when it was like the AAD CDs, I agree wholeheartedly. When you get a good remaster though, man, this baby's warm. Trust me, this baby's warm. Okay, so I want to get into this album because I have mixed feelings about this particular album. The album opens up with Drive My Car. This is one of those pop Beatles songs, and it's one of those pop Beatles songs that usually kept me away from the Beatles. Baby, you can drive my car. Just no disrespect to people that like it, but when I've heard Elmo go beep 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 beep, yeah. Sorry, okay. I stay away from it. From there, we go into Norwegian Wood. Norwegian Wood is actually a really cool song as an acoustic kind of track. I like the experimentation with the acoustic instruments in there or the acoustic sounds and whatnot. Cool tune. Is it a Beatles tune that I go to ever listen to on my own? No. Honestly, it's not. It's not that it's a bad tune, it's just not the type of tune that I normally would go to listen to on my own. But major props and respect. After that, we get to You Won't See Me. I really never honestly think of this song when I think of this album. It's not a song that really pops out. It's not a bad tune, but it's album filler, but Beatles album filler, so it's not like it's basic album filler. And it's not like that White Album, Revolution, weird, crazy album filler stuff, okay? No. Let's be clear. All right. After that, we get into Nowhere Man. Good tune. Not my kind of tune. It is, but it isn't. The Beatle harmonies and stuff like that, they're kind of okay, but I always found that the Beatle harmonies were one of the things about the pop era that I'm not really a fan of. And it's not, they're not, their harmony, it feels like they're harmonies for the sake of harmonies to make it sound more poppy and whatnot. And it feels like it's less about delivering a good song. You know what I mean? Best way I know how to put it. Nowhere Man doesn't really kind of apply to that because the way they use the harmonies in Nowhere Man, they're kind of layered in there nicely. But I'm still not a huge fan of the song. It's a little too light and fluffy for me. Then we get into Think for Yourself. Ooh, surprise, surprise. First song that I really start to like on the album and I actually listen to on a regular basis is a George Harrison song. Yeah, if you're one of my regular viewers, you may have heard me mention George Harrison is my favorite of the Beatles. So usually if you hit a George Harrison track, especially on the later stuff, it usually tends to be one of the ones I prefer on the album. That being said, that is followed up by The Word. I like The Word. The Word is actually really cool, man. I really dig that song. I really kind of get into it and the music behind it and everything about it is just it's something on this album. It's a little bit different. It's when the Beatles start getting a little bit different, a little bit interesting. Then we get into Michelle. We're back to that light, fluffy pop kind of side of the Beatles. I'm not as big on. What Goes On? Another tune though that I found was really cool. That's comes after Michelle. I really get into that one. Good tune. I will say that there's a lot of most of the hits on this album come from what I would describe as the poppy side, and if you notice, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the hits off this album. And it's not that I don't like the songs or I think that they're bad songs. They're just songs that don't appeal to my tastes or my enjoyment. You know what I mean? Let's be honest. The Beatles are who they are, not only because they did it first, which is a valid argument, but because what they did. You know what I mean? So, okay, yeah. So what goes on? Good tune. Really enjoy that one. From there we go into Girl, and Girl. You ever see the Across the Universe movie? I much prefer the version in the Across the Universe movie as opposed to this one. Okay, but either way, not a huge fan of it. I'm Looking Through You. Oh, surprise, surprise. We're back to George Harrison and back to another tune that, I think it's kind of fun. Now, this one's a little poppy, catchy, and hooky, but what I like is it's still got a raw kind of vibe to it. Like there were songs in the Beatles' early days, the ones that don't feel forced, don't feel produced to make them look all cute and pretty boys. The ones that are a little raw, those are the ones that were always a little better, a little more fun to me. And I'm Looking Through You kind of has that sensibility where it's a little more raw, a little more rock still. In My Life, that is one of those songs that it is a really, really good tune, man. And you can't deny that In My Life is a great tune. And for guys that were so young, to write a song that honestly feels so reflective, they just have that special nerve. there's just something magical about that song, you know? It does. It feels like, you know, someone looking back over their life. It's almost like, you know, for a moment they caught themselves and they were able to, you know, through transcendental meditation to tap their older self and look back and see their younger self and look back and see their older self. And in my life, man, I loved you all. After that, we get into Wait. Not a song I often think about or remember. If I Needed Someone is a good tune. That's a little more back to that raw-esque kind of Beatles. Doesn't feel poppy. It feels a little more raw. It feels a little more rocky, a little more underground. And then Run for Your Life is the one that ends the album. And not a bad tune. It's not a bad closer for the album. It doesn't have that punch that I like for a closer, but it's not bad. The whole way around, I'm not a huge fan of Rubber Soul, but I'm not a huge fan of Rubber Soul just because it's not the time period of the Beatles that I like. Let's be honest, okay? That's all it is. It's purely just my taste towards the music that is the reason I am not a fan of this album. This album is full of damn cars. This album is full of Beatles standards, Beatles classics, and they're Beatles standards and they're Beatles classics for a reason. They've deserved the reputation that they've gotten, whether I enjoy that music or not. As a musician who has gone and actually looked at the Beatles from a music side, and I'm not going to get into a whole musical breakdown here because I just learned how to play some of the crap when I say this, okay? You know? It's good. It's solid. It's very enjoyable. There is stuff you can learn from this album as a musician, whether you like this album or not, and that's how I am. There is definitely stuff I have learned from this album. Um, would I recommend this album to everybody? Honestly, I always ask people when I talk to them what type of Beatles fan they are, because most people usually are divided into either early Beatles or late Beatles, which is really funny since the Beatles really only kind of ran for a decade, right? And, you know, so anyways, uh, if you are a later Beatles fan, you're going to be really kind of iffy on this one. If you're an early Beatles fan, you probably enjoy this album more so, I think. There's really no mid Beatles. This would be the closest to mid Beatles, and it's not really mid Beatles. This is still kind of more early Beatles. Anyways, that's my opinion. Feel free, leave me your thoughts. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and otherwise, peace, love, take care.